Welcome everybody, good evening. My name is Helen Brunsden and it's great to be joined by Åsa, and we are going to be talking about animation and her career and what we're up to at the moment. So this session is part of, and I'm just looking, it's hashtag It's Short It Out. It's brought to you by the Encounters Film Festival based in lovely Bristol, the BFI Network and Watershed, and it's part of Depict 2020. Share your shorts if you've been one of the ones that have been sort of doing those with us on social media by today, actually the end of today, using hashtag Short It Out. But tonight's, and that's the whole Short It Out sessions, and I recommend watching those that have been before us. But tonight's event is in partnership with Aardman Animations, thank you Aardman, and Short It Out Front Room Filmmakers Q&As are supported by BAFTA and Channel 4. So those are our thank yous, and again, thank you to Alex Taylor and Rich Warren that are behind the scenes helping us out here. So, so how the format's going to work tonight is we're going to do a little bit of chit chat, and we've also got some clips to show and maybe some stills. So let's kick it off. So welcome, Åsa. So how are you doing today? You all right?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yeah. And so in case nobody sort of is familiar, I'm sure they've already done their homework, everybody out there, but you are from Finland. You moved over to London in 2001, and you are now represented in the last sort of 5-6 years by Aardman Animations in Bristol, so you made the move over to Bristol. But I just wanted to ask, before we show the show reel, tell us a little bit about yourself, but tell us about growing up in Finland, and also how you discovered art, because art's very important in your family. Maybe art was discovered a long time before animation. So I just wanted you to
yeah.
If that's okay.
Yeah, so I grew up in Finland, and I suppose my biggest inspiration or influence has been my grandmother, really, because she was the one encouraging us to draw, or me and my sister to draw, and she was a painter and quite a successful one, and we've always been influenced by her art. It's always been around us in our family home, and she was with us very much when she was ill. And I suppose also she's been sort of a role model in terms of starting quite late in her life. She started late 20s, I suppose. Then it was quite late, painting, and then painting until she was 60. But with that, I feel like she sort of taught me that it doesn't really matter if you come to what you love to do later in life. It's important is the journey, and that you really pursue what you love to do. So I always knew I loved drawing, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. So I decided to go to art college after school to study graphic design. Didn't know much about it, but it was sort of a 3-year course that was more like a foundation course, but sort of focused on graphic design. And then I worked for a small graphic design company in Finland for 2 years. But I still had the itch of sort of drawing more. And I had sort of put that aside while I was working. So I felt like I wasn't ready to just work, and I wanted to study more, so I decided to quit my job and move to England. And I was quite lucky. I didn't have a place at university when I came here, but I had an interview. So I went to Middlesex University to study illustration, and it was really there that I took a course in animation, and it was a bit of Flash and something else, but it was really, that's the moment where I got introduced to animation. And I'm sure you animators sort of recognize that feeling of making your illustration move for the first time, and really was like a epiphany, a magical moment. You felt like God to your own little universe. and I was really hooked by that time. So I then decided to make a film as my final project, and not illustrations. So I made a film, and that really paid off, because the guy that had come into our university to teach us animation, a guy called Tom Mortimer, he then asked if I wanted to come for a work placement at his small animation studio, 12.6. And so I did, and I stayed there for a very long time.
We'll get on to that, because I think again, sort of like, you know, the journey working for small studios, getting to know everybody in the industry, and then moving on to larger studios. We've got a question, maybe from the people joining us as well, but I've certainly got plenty of questions to ask about that. But I think that's a fantastic setup, actually. So what we're going to see is your show reel that you've kindly sent over, and I think this absolutely sets up the breadth, your stunning breadth of work, and also your visual styles, and talking about graphics and illustration. I guess we are doing a little bit of a disclosure, and that is the sort of like, it might not run as smoothly as what you would normally see off your Vimeo or your YouTube links, but I know in our chat we're going to put on there your website, and where people could go and have a look at it running real, you know, it is running real time, but you know what I mean, to the stream. So if we could play that, please, that would be perfect. It's only 90 seconds long. Great. So we just thought to everybody out there that it'd be nice to see something moving before. We're always talking about visual imagery, and it's been just nice to see something. So so tell us about a little bit about, you know, sort of you then sort of moving back to London to work to be at Middlesex and working as a mature student. Did you consider this, maybe that somebody is thinking of going back to college or retrain, or did you consider this a risk? Did you give yourself a time limit to see how that might all pan out for you, or did you just go for it?
I think the beauty of being young is that you're quite brave and naive, but naive in a good way, in a great way. And unfortunately, when you grow older, you kind of lose a little bit of that. Some people, not all people. But you just have to think about yourself and what you want to do. And I know I was privileged to be able to go abroad. You know, I did work hard for it and saved up money and so on. But equally, you know, Finland also has a great system that they actually support as well going abroad. So you get a little bit of money to actually go and study. But I mean, it doesn't last. I still worked on the side every weekend.
But it gives you a certain attitude, doesn't it? And spotting opportunities.
Absolutely.
Actually, that maybe I'm always sort of keen for people to learn that. You know.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
you've got to spot the opportunities and kind of go.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think it was quite good, at least for me, to be a mature student, because you also you work quite hard, because you know that you don't have maybe that much time, you know, you don't want to waste the kind of thing, and maybe appreciate to really grab on to everything you learn. But it was a bit of a shock, I remember, because I got into the second year, and first as well, I was like, oh my God, everyone is so talented. I was so amazed by the talent. And then also I remember the first class we had, there was a tutor saying, like, out of the 100 and whatever students you are, 3 of you are going to make it as an illustrator. And that was the first thing he said to us. But that just made me want to work harder, I suppose.
I was going to say, you know, sort of that either cuts you or it doesn't, you know, it sort of like makes you work harder. And actually, you know, to be fair, for those doing art, any art related courses, we have to work hard. You have to be prolific in terms of, you know, keeping it up. I've got a few questions coming in, so I'm just going to try and tie it in, because I know we might shift around a little bit, but then you've already mentioned then, by Tom coming in to teach about animation, that you joined forces, or actually a long-term collaboration with 12'6", that company. Dave Anderson, who's great, actually runs Dog and Rabbit, you know, that's his studio now, and they do have a really great stable of illustrators and graphic designers. There's a question coming in from Janet, which kind of ties into, maybe you want to answer about, talk us through working for a small studio where you may have to multi-role, you may have to be asked to do a lot of things at once that might take you out your comfort zone, to work into a large studio. We can cut it into two, working for a small studio. But Janet's question is, which slightly might answer your question about the small studios. Do you prefer learning on the job or carving out time to learn techniques, processes and software, etc.? And maybe that's an answer that ties in slightly with working with smaller studios who maybe there's not, you just have to throw yourselves in, maybe.
You definitely have to throw yourself in small studio. And I remember even in the graphic design studio, I remember I was there in work placement for I don't know, a month, and then the art director, she went on maternity leave, so it was down to me, and I was like, oh, I mean, this was a very small studio. So I was like, I literally had to learn on the go, and it was quite good to be pressured into learning quickly. I mean, she was always there in the back and helped me out, but still, and the same was with 12'6", but I think the setup of a smaller studio is quite great in some ways, because everyone does a little bit of everything, and not all small studios are like that, but definitely 12'6", Tom and Dave, they gave us a lot of opportunity to kind of explore and experiment, which was absolutely fantastic now looking back, that we could all learn from each other. And and I learned from the people that had been there before me, so they were like my mentors, and I really learned about animation there. I didn't know much when I came to 12'6", so but they also appreciate the illustration side of it, so I did a lot of illustrations and character design and developed that side as well.
Yeah, but also potentially nobody to kind of turn next to pass it on to, so you have to get you know, roll up your sleeves and get involved. Absolutely. Don't you? So and just in answer to her question, do you carve out enough time to maybe still learn new techniques or processes or software?
Oh, do you know what? I mean,
we wish on our wish list.
I wish, and yes, and I don't know if that's to do with the bigger studio that you're involved in, that you don't have the same opportunities, or is it to do with like being a bit older, having a family? You know, you can't work around the clock, which I did before. You worked weekends, like everyone stayed late. Because also, like, it was socializing late hours, but you were learning while it was socializing. Yeah. So it's harder nowadays.
It is. I mean, and it's always sometimes maybe there's some emerging people out there to know which softwares to learn, and stuff, but maybe our advice might be around, you know, just get the craft skills down first, isn't it? You know, sort of learn, you know, sort of before I come on to somebody else's question, is I know we spoke a little bit about this, is when, you know, there's different methods and different processes that people work towards, but some people carry a sketchbook around with them, some people don't. You know, are you a person that carries your ideas just around in your head, or do you have sort of like a certain way of getting them down?
I wish I would be a person that carries a sketchbook around and does drawing all the time. I don't, I'm afraid. I do love drawing, and I mean, because I come from an illustration background, I do try to hold on to that as much as I can, especially in the beginning of a project, either doing the character designs or some of the backgrounds, or at least for a pitch, for example, you do quite a lot of that work yourself. And then I suppose this is working a bigger studio and working as a director, you work much more in a team where everyone has their own role, so you're kind of passing on those responsibilities. So, you know, which means that you might not, you know, learn so much about new software, animation software anymore, so because you have animators animating for you. But I do still love drawing, and I do, every time I start a project, I start in a sketchbook. There isn't that many people, most people just do it on their tablets and Cintiq straight away, but I still love pen and paper so much, so I still sketch and then take them into the computer.
Yeah, and I'd like, you know, we can definitely see that throughout your show reel and the characters, and again, I recommend your website to go and have a look at. You've put some characters up there and things. We've got another question that maybe is directly from your show reel, actually, and that is somebody's asking, you can see clearly that you work with a variety of animation techniques. Do you prefer 2D, 3D animation or stop motion, or does your preference depend on the project?
Nowadays it definitely depends on the project. I mean, I started as a 2D animator and then started to explore, but I do think I mean, in that sense, I do want to explore new media all the time, like, say, you know, the puppetry for the Coldplay video, like, that was a new media for me. I hadn't done puppetry before, and I loved that. I loved it. So I'm definitely want to push myself in that sense.
But I guess, sorry, go ahead. But I guess we could also answer, though, that actually most of the work on your the body of work on your show reel actually can translate across the board into all techniques, because I think, again, it's about grounding, it's about structure, about how you construct your characters. So I think your work translates across the board, really. So we're going to talk a bit about bigger projects later on. Somebody else, I'm just reading them out now instead of the names, I'm afraid, but do you think that, without realising it or even deliberately, Finland plays a role in your works, from language to culture, geography, and of course Moomins? And we do thank you for putting the Moomins on the bed with Shawnee too. But because we're talking a bit about this, isn't it? Moomins plays a big part.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's a massive part. I mean, I didn't really read that many comics, or, I mean, I suppose animation, it was quite limited in terms of what we were exposed to, I suppose. Or I didn't watch a big breadth of animation when I was growing up. But Moomins were definitely a very sort of big presence in our lives, and most Finnish people. But I just love Tove Jansson's way of taking these mundane stories and creating something really rich with them, and she's sort of mixing the melancholy and humor, and she's not afraid of touching on darker subjects, which I suppose I quite like well in my work. So and just her characters are just quirky and wonderful and strange.
Great scale, actually, and again, that scale translates into your work quite a lot. So it's really lovely how everybody sits in the same, but belong in the same family almost, you know.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. So they, huge influence. And I'm actually reading her adult stories at the moment as well, and she's a really good adult fiction writer as well. So
Yeah. Have you got anything to show? No, you haven't got anything hidden down.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, here's actually her comics with this one that I loved, and I think she started for an English newspaper, drawing these comics, and then the book that I was reading is Winter Book, by Tove Jansson. So there again, it's just wonderful, those little small stories.
Yeah, and I think it's just, again, sort of like that culture element of you will never go away. That's in you, isn't it? So
definitely.
And nor would you want it to. So I think, again, sort of shooting around about actually collaborators. You've got a great relationship. We were talking about character design and background design a little bit, but Mark Moynihan, isn't it, is a sort of a long-term collaborator of yours, isn't it? I just maybe just pick up on how you two get each other, you know, sort of how that came about as a working relationship, and how I guess when that happens, it's magic, isn't it? You know, and you can second guess each other. So maybe that's quite interesting for people to hear.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think he came to 12 at 6 in 2012. He won a competition to come for work placement, but then quickly stayed on afterwards. And straight away we started working together, and exactly like you said, we sort of got each other, which was really lovely. And I worked on so many projects together with him, and I think as well, like he's sort of, when you find someone that you work with, it is lovely to work with them, because they get you, and they can also, you know, tell you when things don't work, and you don't get offended, and you spur each other on, and you sort of work up new styles together, kind of thing, which is great. So,
and you embellish, isn't it? It's sort of, you know, it's a great way of sort of knowing sort of boundaries, and when those relationships happen, they're gold dust, aren't they? So
totally. That's why also when I came to Aardman, then he also came on projects to work with me then, and now he's based in South Africa, but we still work together. So on some projects, I mean, he's working
same time zone, isn't it? So
yeah,
right. It's far apart. So yeah, okay. I'm really conscious that there's lots of questions coming in, so let me ask a few more. Claire is asking, your work is lovely. That's great.
Oh,
have you ever done any animated documentary work? If not, would you consider it? I would like to tie that in. Maybe do you consider, you've done a lot of short form work, commercial work, and short films, obviously. Would you consider longer techniques, longer formats? I mean, feature films or half-hour specials, without giving, you know, any trade secrets away of what you're working on? But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, up until maybe a year ago or so, I was quite happy working in shorter forms like commercials and short films, and I thought that format suited me well. I still think it does, but then of course again it comes this thing of like hunger, you want to do something different, and the longer you push it, you want to maybe do it something more. And then I was working on a project that we're maybe gonna turn into a half an hour special, so we started that process a bit, and that got me very excited. It's much harder but it sort of kind of got me hungry to doing longer formats. And documentary, yes, I haven't so far done it, but yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm interested in human stories, and that would tie into that very well. So
yeah. Observational in that sense.
Observational,
you know, yeah.
So possibly.
Yeah, and documentary, the style of docs is sort of quite suited to animation, isn't it? So so let's hope we get that. So yeah, but actually, you know, and for that, people don't quite realise the leap, do they, between a short film, sort of, you know, let's say 10 minutes or under 15, and then leaping up to that 30-minute space, and even then a 60 or 80 minutes. you know, there's a lot of you know, positivity there, and sort of like challenges in terms of story and characters, isn't there? And just sort of, you know, how you tackle that. So but do you know what, it's fantastic to hear that that is your ambition, because I would love nothing more to see more, you know.
Happen, but you can always dream.
Exactly. So I think can I just ask this mother question? I'm interested Jana is interested. I'm interested to know about your side of being a professional animator, director, and being a mother at the same time. Does that restrain you, or has it restrained you? How do you handle the long hours that animation demands? And now we are both mothers here, so but you know, it's directed at you. So and maybe you can talk about that in terms of family life in current situations with lockdown, or whether it's, you know, that's a law into itself as well at the moment. But yeah,
I mean, it's very challenging, and I think also it just shows that, unfortunately, even in Aardman there's fewer female directors, and I don't know why that is exactly, but it definitely, like, working as a mom, it is quite a challenge. And I when I moved to Aardman, my son was 6 months, and on the day we moved, I had a pitch coming in, so it was kind of thrown in at the deep end, and I was very torn. I felt like, oh my God, I'm a bad mom, but equally, you find a way to make it work. And before, I worked so many hours and so many weekends and so on. But when you can't do that, you have to find a way to be a bit more efficient, which is hard for me, but you find a way to squeeze that into that time, and then you go home and you're with your family. So you find a way of working differently. But of course, you also have to have a supportive family in order to do this. And I think Aardman is quite family friendly, so they're quite supportive as much as they can in terms of the hours. But you still, as a director, of course, it is up to you that this project gets done. So you might have to then work in the evening to get things done. But yeah, they are quite supportive, and I think also in Bristol in general is quite good.
Yeah, well, that's it'll always remain a juggling act, won't it? Because I mean, even with my two, it's sort of like there's no right and wrong. You just got to find your own way that works for you and the family, isn't it? And yeah. I mean, on that note, maybe another one to add in is, have you come across any boundaries or challenges being a female director coming up through the industry? I mean, maybe compared to, I mean, I know I've been in it since the early 90s, you know, sort of like, you know, I can see there's a lot more groups and a lot more community feel to join now. More can be done, absolutely. But how have you sort of faced it through?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been lucky. So, like, even though there weren't that, when I started 1206, there weren't that many female animators, but I didn't, it was such a lovely group anyway, so I didn't think about it that much, and as the time went, there were more and more female animators coming up, and now as well, like there's so much more than when I started, which is fantastic, and equally with Aardman as well. So yes, there isn't as many female directors. There could be more, but I'm not sure why that is, but I feel supported there. So.
And I think my note to that, and it appears in probably larger crews, and that is that we have a tendency of trying to find women in the more supervisory roles. Let's try, there's still a challenge to sort of get them into those roles, and I know, please, there's lots of brilliant people, female supervisors out there, but So yeah, so it's just sort of, you know, I've seen a shift certainly in the last sort of number of years with people more, and just trying to find, I think those communities groups are out there now, you know, whether it's on Facebook or LinkedIn, you know, just like there's loads out there, you know, so but more as always could be done. So what I was, somebody's come in with, hang on a minute, and that might be linked to picking a team. What process do you go through when it comes to picking a team for a project? How can someone without experience or small experience in the industry get involved in your project in the medium of stop frame, for example?
Well, I mean, the team that we pick are normally people either that are very suitable for that project, or quite often you work with people that you worked before. But with no experience, I would say, unfortunately, there isn't so much like work placement apart from like in the longer form. I think with stop motion and the feature film of Aardman, they have internship and so on, but not the commercial and short form. So we unfortunately haven't got that in place at the moment. So that's why I feel like, say, a smaller company is perfect for that. And that's how all of us started. We started a work placement, and it was so great. And I also feel like everyone benefits from it. Like the people that go on the work placement, but also the people that are working with work placement people, because everyone gets something from it. And it's
also, yeah, exactly that. I would give the same advice. Also, you tend to see a lot going on at once. So if you thought you might wanted to be an animator, but you're actually preferred to be a model maker, you know, you're seeing it firsthand, you know, sort of helping out. And you thought, oh, I didn't know that this part of the process, or that there is even a job in this area. So I'm afraid to say, just like there is ways of getting that experience, but also, you know, be prolific with a portfolio, or trying to do as much as you can at home. And I know lockdown sort of actually lockdown could be a great opportunity to start doing some small pieces of little tests. I know, you know, maybe sort of like that you've already submitted to depict. So there's great ways of people being able to see your work, to get in front of it. And I know, for example, Aardman have a great Aardman Academy, don't they, with some opportunities there. So I don't know, and I don't know what area you're interested in this anonymous question comes in from, but good luck to you. So somebody's actually asked, do you ever work with indie filmmakers on shorts? How does that process go? Are you involved with the story creation? So there's quite a few questions in that. But I mean, it's hard enough getting your own films off the ground, isn't it? I mean, and there's lots to unpick there in terms of not just by the question, but also about, you know, how do you get on board with a producer who obviously, you know, that role is very dear to my heart, is collaborating with the right producer. Maybe you do get involved in then going to pitch to get funding, or, you know, sort of, and how much you do speculative in terms of building up the idea to show a potential funder or investor to come on board. So but I guess the obvious one is are you involved with the story creation? And maybe we could say that from an IP perspective, you know, sort of coming up with that idea. It might be a character that you put with another character, or a whole written story.
Yeah, I mean, Aardman does these sort of call outs. It's all changing a little bit at the moment, so the departments and so on, but they do every now and again, they do a call out where you can come up with your idea, and then they put you together with the producer, or your idea gets picked. But it's not very often, but so it's only a few of these that I've done. I'm working on one at the moment, which has been in development for over a year.
That's quite short then, isn't it? We've just got to give a reflection to that, isn't it? Sometimes they can fly off straight away, or sometimes they're little fledglings that for a while. So
but they, you know, if it will happen, it will be wonderful. But then, say in commercial department, which I have sort of mainly been focusing on at Aardman for the last 5 years and making short films, that's much like faster turnaround. So a pitch comes in, the producers sort of decides which director they feel is suitable for the brief, and then we have to pitch on it, and quite often we pitch against some of the other directors at Aardman and other production companies. So it's quite tough because there's a lot of sort of competition there. But then, and then if you get it, you then work with the producer. But yeah, I mean, in terms of so I haven't. If you talked about picking and in, but what was the question? Picking and.
Are you involved? Oh, picking it. Do you ever work with indie filmmakers on shorts? How does the process go? Are you involved with story creation? That was the exact.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've done. Yeah, because it would either be my idea or I would. Yeah. So. And
you've got great examples of your own films that you have.
Yeah.
You know, come up with, or sometimes, you know, again, sort of depending on the process here. What people's circumstances are, you might work with a story editor, or you might come up with, you know, you might work with a script writer, and you come up with the more the character design side of things. So, you know, it's a complete process and collaboration, and actually it's case by case slightly, isn't it? And,
totally case by case, and sometimes you're writing more of the story, and then you have a story writer coming in helping you, or sometimes you get given a story that you then make your own. So it all depends on the project, really.
Exactly, and adaptations, you know, that's another world that sometimes, you know, sort of like people don't always tackle. They always think they have to come up with an original idea, you know. So so yeah, no, that's a good one. But and how and I know how do, I guess that slightly ties in with how you cultivate ideas, where your inspirations come from, because again, they can come from different sources, can't they? Whether it's, I know we spoke briefly about TED Talks, or looking, you know, sort of like where people get their ideas from, which might not be directly lifted from something you've seen, but it might take you off as a springboard to something else, mightn't it?
Totally. So, I mean, I get inspired by so many things, of course, and but I do like to listen to radio, listen to talks, as we said, and I like going for walks. I feel sometimes you need to brainstorm a lot, look at a lot of things, and then just need to go on for a walk and then let the sort of subconscious work a little bit. But it's taking like a specific short film, like Lost Property, for example, and there was definitely, I got the idea from listening to the radio, and they were talking about a lost property office, and I sort of, I think it was a lost property for exhibition. They made an exhibition with the lost property as a theme, and I just thought it was really interesting, all these objects and all the stories surrounding them, and I sort of started to think about what the lost property could mean, and it could be a metaphor for something else, and I thought it could be for our mind and our memory, and I thought that setting would be really great to make a film out of. So I had the sort of setting, and then I am always, I think you sort of want to work with things that you're scared of, or love, or feel inspired by. And I think one thing for me is like memory has always been quite a big theme, or maybe a fear. My memory is really bad anyway, and the fear of losing it has always been quite big, and I really like films about Alzheimer's, or they have always affected me quite greatly, and so I sort of wanted to put those two together, and that's how Lost Property sort of came about, and then I started to and about love and two people's relationship, and so that's how I started that whole process.
Again, it might not be different next time around, mightn't it? You know,
totally.
or sort of maybe so ones that you've already got. And there's always a famous thing of if somebody's feeling not very inspired, pick up a newspaper, you know, or and look at the racing pages and see the names of horses or something. You know, just something that can springboard and get you quite, you know, sort of like thinking on a different way, really, or what would make a good film, or and actually watch films is also a great, you know, sort of like whether it's deconstructing them or just taking, you know, so just like looking them for inspiration, really. So are you, I mean, this is a lockdown question maybe for people out there, sort of are you being, not to put you on the spot, are you being creative? We can't stop being creative during this process, but is there anything that you've started in lockdown or you wish you had, and not to, you know,
I mean, I think
on the family front, you know, we've got family.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think you think you have grand plans and you think that you're going to be extremely creative and all this, and it just doesn't pan out the way you think. No, but the thing is, I am working on, I've done a pitch. There was a pitch that I did, and then I'm working on this bigger project that is also a pitch, but so I'm writing a story. So I suppose I am creative because that's the job that I'm on at the moment. And then I was looking into lots of courses that I thought I could do and so on. But equally, it's such a strange situation we're in. I don't think you should be too hard on yourself either if you're not, because I think it's all about these emotions. I mean, I've gone through so many different phases of different emotions and going a bit mad in this little room. So I think it's yes, enjoy and try to be creative, but don't be too hard on yourself either, because I think all these experiences will come out somehow, in some ways, maybe later, you know, as well. So,
and as an industry, it'll be interesting to sort of what gets created or produced, or, you know, sort of in the next 1 to 2 years, won't it? How this will inform maybe the topics, or even go back to the documentary question, maybe there'd be lots more, you know, sort of like what will come out of it. So we'll soon see the results of that. But somebody is asking, I think this refers to when we were talking about maybe some dark subjects earlier on. You said somebody's asking, when you say dark subjects, do you believe that as an animator or even as an audience, animation includes enough of mental health and illness-related characters or storylines in an unbiased light?
If there's enough, there's always room for more. But I mean, we have Aardman. I know that we have done quite a few of these films about,
And there's been quite a lot of student films, I have to say, in terms of graduation films of the last, say, 5 years. I would say that you talked about maybe dementia and memory, you mentioned, and somebody refers that they've got a bad memory as well. And there's been a lot of, I'm thinking Royal College of Art or NFTS graduation films that actually embrace the spectrum that is our art form of animation. You know, there's comedic ones, there's light and shade ones. So I think animation, if we want to look at that, is a perfect vehicle to sort of like take on board those ones, you know. And somebody is asking, what is it about Aardman that you like?
What is it? Well, I think I've always obviously looked up at them and what they've done, and sort of the creature comforts are always my favorite. But I think actually the Pearson sisters that I watched, which I just realized that you produced, right? When
I was headed up the short films, so
which I love.
Good choice.
But because I think that was sort of during the time when I started to watch lots of short films, and I just loved it. And then kind of I realized how much more Aardman does, and then when I started to work here, I realized they do even more. Like, people mainly know them of just Wallace, it's not just at all, but Wallace and Gromit and Shaun the Sheep and all that, which is absolutely amazing. But they also do so much more. So I think that's when you realize the potential for the,
and a stamp of quality, isn't it? You know,
yeah,
the Aardman name. It's no, it's great. And maybe my question might be to you, to sort of, we're in about 5 minutes, and then let's talk just very briefly about the Coldplay video, and for me now, looking after the British Animation Awards, it's congratulations, because actually the last time we actually met in person was you winning a British Animation Award. So congratulations, and that was in March when remember when we used to meet in groups.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was the last time I saw people, really.
Absolutely. So, but let's talk about that, because Rich, if you don't mind doing the slideshow as Åsa's talking about the Coldplay video, maybe just talking about sort of how this came about, you know, and I know sort of after we finish, we're just going to play maybe the whole video if people want to see. But again, it can be seen on your various sites. So
so Coldplay came to Aardman, and they gave us 4 tracks to listen to, and then I think they wanted a female director, which was really great. And so a few of us pitched on this, and I was straight away drawn to this track, Daddy track, because there was something I felt I started to sort of get visual ideas straight away when I listened to it, and I felt it was really emotional, and I got drawn to it. So I picked that and made a pitch document of it, and I was very lucky to be pitched to do this. And I think also, you know, even though it was quite a nice budget for it, but it was still for stop motion and making a music video. You need to have quite a big budget to do it. So we had some sort of constraints, shall we say, that I wish I could have done a stop motion out of it all, but that wasn't possible. So I had to look into a different route, and that's why sort of puppetry came up and a mixed media approach. But now looking back at it, I'm so glad that we had those sort of constraints, and because otherwise we wouldn't have come up with this style. So sometimes it is good to have limits, because it pushes you to be creative in a different kind of way. I mean, I'm not saying, I mean, it would have been amazing to do it all in a set, but I'm quite happy the way it turned out. So,
and that's where all the best work comes from, you know, is finding those things of producers trying to get your vision to screen, you know, and it's very cinematic, isn't it? So sort of, you know, for, you know, your budget and things, it's sort of like, it's great. Somebody's asking, I don't know whether this is referring to Coldplay, but what did your pitch document look like?
My pitch document, I mean, to be honest, like, the story was quite close to what it became to be. It was just bigger, like more in it. And I had some of the character design. I mean, to be honest, like, what was fantastic with this project was that Coldplay were really, like, trusting in my vision. I was so surprised that they had so much faith in me. And it was only one comment they had, and there was, because I actually made the girl into a boy first, and Chris wanted it to be a girl. And I'm quite glad now thinking about it. I don't know why I made a boy. Maybe I was thinking about my son, I don't know. Anyway, but I'm quite glad that he wanted us to change that. Yeah, he was a good chap. Yeah, some of the quiz, I had a sort of rough storyboard, I had some character design, I had some visual concept art. At that point, Mark Moynihan, who also worked on this, he wasn't on board yet. So the visuals, they definitely enhanced, and this wonderful color palette really came to life when he got on board. So I'm so glad that then we started working together. So that sort of changed, and obviously then yeah, we hadn't built the puppet, so I designed the characters, and then we worked together with Brunskill and Grimes, and they made the puppets and puppeteered it as well. So yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. And again, maybe, I mean, I know we're going to run out of time, but maybe talk about, you know, maybe you were drawn to that track because it's actually what animation does best. It's sort of like, it allows for interpretation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There's some really great moments in there that you fill with animation, and that's what we do. You know, we sort of like, we fill in, and especially, you know, Aardman, not in terms of the Coldplay ad, but we, you know, as I used to say, it's very famous for the oohs and the ahs, you know, so and the very personal and engaging side. So, but congratulations, I think it's great. A couple of last, I'll finish with one of my questions, but somebody's asking, some stories look better as animation. How do I approach an illustrator to work with me? And do you have any ideas about funding a project? We don't know what project it is. We can only assume it might be a short film. Yes, how do I approach an illustrator to work with me? It just, again, maybe, you know, you can answer this, but also it's whether you've got to find the right illustrator as well. You know, there's sort of like something that sings out with looking at, you know, there are websites called ArtStation where there's loads of illustrators on there, isn't there? And there's, you know, everybody's got their own choice of where they look for illustrators, but
yeah, I mean, it also depends so much on, like, is this a personal project, is it a fun project, it depends on those kind of things. You know, when you don't have much money, it's quite good to work with maybe people that you know, that you both can kind of invest in this together. So if you have a budget, then you can approach different, you know, illustration agencies, or and
look at films that inspire you, that you might then want to pick up, who did some of the artwork or concept and things. So just sort of keep, you know, our industry is very much about looking at examples, isn't it? And who's doing what, and keeping abreast of everything. It's worth just noting that our industry as animation is a lovely, it's almost like a small, still lovely industry. And you come across a lot of people that, you know, that sort of maybe when you first knew at Middlesex right through to today, don't you? So it's always bearing in mind we're a small industry, so don't annoy anybody.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, it's crazy how small it is, and you know, I you know, the reason why, for example, I started working for Aardman was because of Lucy Izzard. For example, they worked at 12 at 6, and she moved into Bristol, and she put me in contact with Aardman, and I had my film in an encounter, so that's the reason why I came to Aardman, and she was just saying, oh, why don't you pop in to say hello to Heather? And it was so great that I had the opportunity, and that's why I got the job, because I was at the right time, right place, shall we say. So
yeah, and it's still who you know, which is really hard for those that listen, you know, that may not already have built up their networks yet, but it's still just keep going, visiting when we can, visiting events like Encounters on the doorstep.
Yeah, absolutely. And our festivals are so fantastic. I mean, I still love them so much, and I wish I would make more short films so I could go to also with your own. But you can go without having a film, of course. But I love festivals so much still.
Absolutely, a live audience is you know, fantastic. So I'm going to quickly end, because we're going. It's putting you on the spot. But do you have a film, animation or live action, that you would have liked to, you wish you'd made?
I think I'm always going back to the film Amelie. just, I mean, it's live action, but I just love that film so much, and just this, yeah.
Very animatable in the sense.
Yes, it is.
In terms of composition, and
yeah, and the colours and the quirkiness, and
the camera shots is this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great choice.
Yeah.
And which it can be an illustration, a drawing, or a film are you most proud of to date that you have done?
Oh,
God. You've got to be proud of all of them. So just pick one of your babies.
Well, I mean, I suppose, I mean, just because it's one of the newest, like, I suppose Coldplay, it was such a wonderful project to work on, and I loved. It was really hard work, but I loved every single second of it.
That's a great note to end on, and actually those only moments come along, you know, sort of let's hope lots of times throughout the rest of your career and things. I think it's fantastic. So I've got to thank everybody for joining us. I think on our behalf, isn't it? That went really quickly, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
I hope we got around to most of your questions, and I know, thank you for sort of making me feel at ease as well asking the questions. And thanks to Rich, thanks to Alex. I know this will be made available to watch again. But actually we're going to play Coldplay, but again, it's feel free, we're not coming back. This is us saying goodbye, isn't it? So and stay safe everybody, and enjoy the Coldplay, the award-winning Coldplay. Is there any last thoughts you want to say, or just say bye-bye?
Yeah, just thank you so much everyone for checking in and listening to us, and yeah, I hope
the comments have been great. They've loved you. Yeah. Don't worry. Like I thought, like I knew they would. So that's absolutely fine. So yeah, and thanks very much. All right, we're going to play Coldplay. So thank you, Åsa.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Bye.